My name is Clara, and I am 26 years old, and 2 weeks ago, my life changed in the most brutal way possible when I walked into my sister's celebration party thinking I would survive one more night of fake smiles and forced politeness, and instead, I walked out, bleeding humiliated and with the certainty that I would never again let them bury me in silence. The night began like so many others in my family where appearances mattered more than truth. The ballroom was filled with glittering lights and polished marble floors, the kind of place my parents adored because it screamed success. Dozens of people were there, colleagues, distant relatives, friends of my sister, who was the golden child, the pride of our family. I stood near the edge of the room, clutching my small purse like a shield and reminding myself to breathe. I should not have come. That thought looped again and again. But I told myself family obligations could not be ignored even when that family had spent years tearing me down. My sister spotted me quickly. Her smile widened, but her eyes were sharp cold. She stepped closer, her perfume thick, her tone dripping with sarcasm as she said loud enough for others to hear, "You actually came. How brave of you to show your face." I forced a smile but said nothing, hoping to escape her attention. But silence was never protection in my family. She lifted her glass, her voice rising as she mocked my work, my choices, my very existence. Guests laughed politely, some uncomfortably, but no one stopped her. I whispered back, barely audible, "At least I do not need to destroy others to feel important." That was the spark. Her face twisted, her eyes flashing with rage. In a split second, her fist shot forward and the crack as it connected with my jaw echoed louder than the music. Pain exploded through my face, stars bursting behind my eyes. Gasps filled the room, but before I could even react, her hand tangled in my hair, and with terrifying force, she yanked me backward, dragging me across the polished floor toward the exit. My scalp screamed. My balance shattered my dignity, ripped apart in front of 50 people dressed in their finest who simply watched. Some even chuckled, my mother among them, her laugh sharp like glass. I caught sight of my father at the bar, not moving, his lips pressed tight, pretending this was not happening. The humiliation cut deeper than the pain. My sister pulled me through the double doors, the chandeliers fading behind us, and threw me against the wall in the hallway. My lip was split blood trickling onto the neckline of my dress, and my hair hung loose in ugly clumps where she had yanked it. I stared at her, breathless, shaking, and she only smirked and said, "You deserved this." Then she turned back inside as though nothing had happened. For a moment, I could not move. My legs trembled, my hands were numb, and my ears rang with the memory of laughter and silence, the twin poisons of my family. Slowly, I stumbled forward out into the cold night air. Each step felt heavier, my chest tight, my pride shattered. When I reached my car, I collapsed into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut as if that thin barrier could protect me from the echo of my sister's fist, the sound of my mother's laugh, and the sight of every single witness who did nothing. In the rearview mirror, I saw a stranger. Her lip was swollen, her cheek already bruising purple, her eyes wild with disbelief and fury. I touched my face, smeared blood across my fingers, and whispered to myself, "This cannot be hidden. Not again." Evidence. The word carved itself into my brain. For years, I had been the silent one, the scapegoat, the invisible shadow. But tonight, something inside me shifted. This was not just another bruise, not just another insult swallowed in the name of family harmony. This was war. My phone was in my purse, buzzing with messages I ignored. I held it tightly, my fingers trembling, and I knew that one call could change everything. One call could end the years of silence, of theft, of cruelty. My sister thought she had destroyed me in front of everyone. She did not know she had just given me the weapon I needed. I took a deep breath, the night pressing in around me, and whispered, "It ends tonight," as I dialed the number that would set everything in motion. Growing up in my family felt less like belonging and more like serving a sentence I never deserved. My sister Amelia was the golden child, the one showered with praise and attention, while I was the afterthought tolerated but never celebrated. From the time I could remember, everything in our household revolved around her. If Amelia won a trophy, the whole family threw a party. If I brought home an A, it was brushed aside as expected or ignored altogether. At birthdays, she received expensive gifts and glowing speeches. I received practical items wrapped in hurried paper, accompanied by reminders not to expect too much. It did not take me long to understand the hierarchy in our home. Amelia was the star, and I was the shadow. My mother reinforced this narrative every day. She adored Amelia, bragged about her beauty, her intelligence, her potential. When it came to me, my mother's tone shifted to criticism or mockery. She would humiliate me in front of her friends, dismiss my drawings or projects as childish, while Amelia's every doodle was hailed as evidence of brilliance. My father was quieter, but his silence was worse than words. He never defended me. He let the comparisons stand his approval reserved entirely for Amelia. His eyes lit up when she entered a room, but when I spoke, he looked past me as if searching for something more interesting in the distance. In school, I tried desperately to earn the recognition I lacked at home. I studied hard, made the honor roll, won a regional art competition. None of it mattered. When I showed my certificate to my parents, my mother shrugged and said Amelia had just been invited to a leadership camp and that was far more important. I remember standing there holding that paper, the pride I had felt dissolving into shame. Amelia knew exactly how to wield her favored status. She teased me relentlessly, taking my clothes, mocking my appearance, reading my diary aloud to her friends when they visited. If I protested, she laughed, and my parents told me to stop being dramatic. She was just having fun, they said, as if humiliation was a normal sibling game. The worst part was that outsiders believed the image my family projected. To the community, we were successful and respectable. My sister was admired as smart and promising, my parents as supportive pillars of society. No one saw the way they chipped away at me behind closed doors. The control stretched into every choice I tried to make. When I wanted to study graphic design in college, my father sneered that it was a hobby, not a career. He pushed me toward law like Amelia, but I refused. That decision branded me a disappointment, a rebel without cause. From then on, every family gathering became a stage where my failures were performed. Amelia thrived in the spotlight, recounting her internships and promotions, while I stood in the corner swallowing the sting of backhanded compliments. My mother's favorite line was, "You should learn from your sister. She knows how to make us proud." The more I tried to carve out a life of my own, the tighter their grip seemed to grow. Even after I moved into my own apartment, the phone calls never stopped. My mother's voice on the line, dripping with manipulation, reminding me of how much they had sacrificed for me, demanding I show gratitude by attending yet another celebration for Amelia. If I hesitated, I was called selfish and ungrateful. My father would add quietly that family loyalty was everything, that reputation mattered more than feelings. The weight of those words crushed me into compliance again and again. There were moments when I almost believed their narrative. When you are told often enough that you are lesser, invisible, unworthy, you begin to wonder if it might be true. I looked at Amelia and saw perfection in their eyes, a mirror I could never measure up to. She spoke with confidence, walked with entitlement, and I shrank beside her like a footnote in someone else's story. Yet deep down, a part of me resisted. I nurtured my own talents in secret sketching late at night, taking freelance design jobs to pay my bills. Each project was a small rebellion, proof that I could stand on my own, even if they never acknowledged it. Still, the scars of neglect and gaslighting shaped me. I grew cautious, hesitant to trust, always expecting betrayal disguised as kindness. I learned to read the room quickly, to anticipate cruelty before it came. It was survival, but it also meant living half a life. Looking back, I realize my presence at Amelia's promotion party was not about support. It was about control. They wanted me there not as family, but as a prop to highlight her glory, a convenient contrast to make her shine brighter. My mother's clipped tone when she called to remind me, "You will be there, right, dear," was not a request. It was an order cloaked in civility. My father followed up with a warning about embarrassing them if I failed to show. I had spent years obeying those subtle commands, sacrificing my peace to keep their image intact. That night, I told myself I was going because it was the right thing to do, but the truth was, I was still tangled in their web of control. I walked into that ballroom carrying not just a gift for my sister, but a lifetime of bruises no one could see. I wanted so badly to believe I could survive a few hours of pretending, but deep down I knew the cracks were ready to split wide open. My family had built Amelia's throne on my silence and my pain, and eventually something had to collapse. The night of the party carried the same heaviness I always felt when stepping into their world. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and marble floors, every corner polished to perfection, every guest dressed to impress. It was a celebration in Amelia's honor, her big promotion, the latest crown in her endless list of triumphs. I arrived late, deliberately hoping to slip in unnoticed, but my entrance drew eyes nonetheless. My mother's lips tightened when she saw me, and her gaze swept over my dress like she was checking for flaws. "You made it," she said with a smile that looked more like a warning, as though my absence would have been the greater scandal. I nodded and retreated toward the edges of the room, clutching my small gift bag. The music floated through the air, conversations buzzed, and everywhere I turned, Amelia's name sparkled on people's tongues. She moved through this crowd like a queen, her laughter rising above the chatter, her hand brushing shoulders as admirers leaned in. I stood back invisible again until she noticed me. She made her way across the room, her high heels striking the floor like a countdown. "Clara," she said loudly enough for heads to turn, "you came after all. I suppose even you can put aside bitterness for one night." A ripple of laughter passed through the guests near us. I forced a small smile, hoping the moment would pass, but Amelia never let moments pass. She took the gift bag from my hand, peeked inside, and her face twisted into a smirk. A framed sketch. How quaint. She turned so the group around her could see, holding it up as if it were a joke. My chest burned with shame as I heard someone chuckle. I clenched my fists, whispering that I should not react, that reacting gave her power. Yet silence had never saved me before. I said softly, "It may not be as grand as your office, but it was made with heart." Amelia's eyes narrowed, then she laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "At least I do not waste my life on meaningless doodles," she said. "I create results that matter." My mother joined her, adding, "Not everyone can be successful, dear. Some of us must simply accept our limits." The words hit harder than they should have. A familiar cut reopening old wounds. I tried to step away, but Amelia followed. She raised her glass high, addressing the crowd nearby. "To those who know what real ambition looks like, unlike certain people who think sketching pays the bills." More laughter. The blood roared in my ears. For years I had endured, but in that moment, something inside me broke. I heard my own voice before I realized I was speaking. At least I built my life without stealing from others. The words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Amelia's expression shifted, fury flashing across her face. The guests fell silent. She stepped closer, lowering her glass, her voice dripping with venom. "What did you just say?" I opened my mouth to repeat it, but the chance never came. Her fist came out of nowhere, crashing into my jaw with a sickening crack. Pain shot through my skull, white stars blinding me. The music stopped, conversations cut off, the room froze. Before I could even steady myself, her hand tangled in my hair, and she yanked with brutal force, dragging me backward across the floor. My scalp seared, my body twisted, and I stumbled, unable to resist. The gasps of the crowd washed over me like waves, but no one moved. Not one person stepped forward. My mother's laugh sliced through the silence, cold and delighted, and my father remained planted by the bar as if watching a show. Amelia pulled me through the doors, the chandeliers blurring behind us, and tossed me against the wall in the hallway. My lip split further, blood spilling onto my dress, and tears I had not even realized were falling burned my cheeks. She looked down at me with disdain and hissed, "You had it coming." Then she turned on her heel and walked back into the party, leaving me crumpled on the floor. The doors closed behind her, and the noise of music resumed faintly, as though nothing had happened. I lay there for a moment, the humiliation heavier than the pain, the image of every face that had stared and done nothing searing itself into my memory. My sister's victory was not her promotion. It was this reducing me to nothing in front of the world. I pulled myself up slowly, my knees shaking, and staggered toward the exit. Each step was a battle, each breath a reminder of what had just been taken from me. By the time I reached the parking lot, the cold air slapped me awake. I stumbled to my car, fumbled for my keys with trembling hands, and collapsed into the driver's seat. The silence pressed in around me, broken only by the pounding of my heart. In the rearview mirror, I saw a stranger staring back, bruised, broken eyes red with unshed tears. My lip was swollen blood trailing down my chin, my hair a tangled mess. I pressed my fingers against my jaw and whispered to myself, "This is the last time." I reached for my phone, still shaking, and held it tight. I did not know who I would call yet, but I knew this was not going to be buried. Not tonight, not ever again. I sat in the car, unable to breathe, the engine off the world outside, blurred by my tears. My hands shook violently as I clutched the steering wheel, the pain in my jaw pulsing with every heartbeat. My scalp burned where Amelia had ripped at my hair, and the taste of blood lingered bitter on my tongue. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out, only the echo of my mother's laugh and Amelia's sneer replaying in my head. My chest tightened until I thought I might suffocate. For a moment, I considered driving away, disappearing, never speaking of this again. That was the way it had always been. My whole life I had swallowed the pain buried, the shame told myself survival meant silence. But staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, I saw a woman who was barely recognizable. My lip was split, my hair tangled, my dress stained, and my eyes hollow with grief. I whispered to myself, "You cannot hide this. Not again." The word evidence seared itself into my mind. Slowly, I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling so badly I almost dropped it, and I snapped photos of my face, my torn dress, the blood on my chin. I turned the camera to my arms where her nails had scratched my skin, and I documented every mark. I told myself these pictures mattered, that they were more than proof, they were a lifeline. I sank back into the seat, clutching the phone to my chest, and tears finally spilled down my cheeks. They had broken me in front of an entire room, and no one had raised a hand to stop it. The betrayal cut deeper than the bruise. My own family had orchestrated my humiliation, and the guests, people I had known for years, had been complicit with their silence. In that moment, the loneliness was unbearable. I thought of all the years I had tried to earn their approval to stand beside Amelia without being invisible, and realized it had all been wasted. My heart ached with the weight of that truth. I felt small, worthless, like a ghost drifting through the ruins of my own life. The cold night air seeped into the car, chilling me to the bone, and for a terrifying second, I believed this was my end, that they had finally erased me completely. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and sobbed quietly, every breath ragged, every memory of their cruelty crashing over me like waves determined to drown me. My father's silence, my mother's cutting words, Amelia's endless mockery. It all swirled until I could hardly separate one wound from another. I thought of the times I had been shoved aside at family gatherings, of the years of being told I was less, of the countless nights I had cried myself to sleep, wondering why I was never enough. Tonight was the culmination of all of it, the proof that in their eyes I would never be anything but disposable. But somewhere beneath the despair, a spark flickered. As I held the phone with its new gallery of bruises, I realized I had something tangible, undeniable. For the first time, the evidence was not just inside me, it was in my hands. That thought steadied me just enough to lift my head. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve and whispered, "This is not the end." My hands were still trembling, but I scrolled through my contacts, staring at names I had not spoken to in years, people I had distanced myself from in my attempts to survive. My finger hovered over one name in particular, a friend who had once said, "I saved her life when she had nothing." My throat tightened, fear clawing at me, but I pressed the call button anyway. As the phone rang, I gripped it like a lifeline, praying someone would answer, knowing that one call might be all it took to change everything. The phone rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. "Clara." It was Dana, a woman I had known in college, someone who had once been on the edge of losing everything. Years ago, she had been brilliant but broke, struggling to finish law school, and I had given her my old textbooks, bought her meals when she could not afford food, even helped with rent once. She had cried then and told me, "You saved me." Life had carried us in different directions, and I had not spoken to her in years, but in that moment, her voice was like oxygen. Dana, I whispered, my voice cracking. I need help. I do not know who else to call. Tell me what happened, she said firmly. No hesitation, only calm strength. So I told her everything. The party, Amelia's fist, her hand in my hair, the blood, the laughter, the silence of the crowd. I spoke through sobs and pauses, my words stumbling out like broken glass. Dana did not interrupt. She listened, and when I finished, when I felt drained and hollow, she said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring the photos. We will fix this. I promise." Something in her tone settled inside me, a promise of solid ground when the floor had been ripped from under me. We said goodbye, and I sat there holding the phone to my chest. For the first time all night, I felt less alone, but I was not done. My hand moved almost on its own, scrolling to another contact. Russell. He was my landlord, a retired cop who had turned into a private investigator. He had always been kind in a distant way, the kind of man who noticed things others ignored. I left him a voicemail, my voice shaky but urgent. "Russell, it is Clara. I need help. Please call me." Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a text. "You are safe. I will dig." It was short, but it felt like armor. I leaned back in my seat, breathing shakily, clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping me tethered. I wiped the blood from my chin, pulled my hoodie from the back seat, and wrapped myself in it. The warmth did not erase the pain, but it gave me a sense of protection. Later at home, I moved like a ghost, washing my face, gently staring at the bruises forming under my skin. I snapped more photos, attached them to an email, and typed Dana's address in the recipient line. For a moment, my hands hovered over the keyboard, then I hit send. The whoosh of the message leaving felt like a release, like the first step into a battle I had been too afraid to fight. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my jaw throbbing, my heart pounding. They thought I would stay silent again. They thought they had erased me for good. They were wrong. This time I had allies. This time I was not fighting alone. Morning light crept through the blinds as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the bruises that had bloomed overnight. My jaw throbbed with every movement, the left side of my face turning an angry shade of purple, and my lip was swollen to the point where even sipping water hurt. I slid on sunglasses to mask the damage and wrapped myself in a loose sweater before leaving for Dana's office. The city streets felt strange, like I was walking through them for the first time, carrying both fear and determination in equal measure. When I arrived at her downtown office, the receptionist barely looked at me before directing me to the corner office. Dana rose from behind her desk when she saw me, her face softening. She hugged me carefully, avoiding my injuries, then sat me down. "Show me everything," she said, her tone steady but her eyes sharp. I pulled out my phone and handed it to her, scrolling through the photos of my face, my torn dress, the scratches on my arm. Her jaw tightened as she examined them. "This is not just assault, Clara. This is a public crime. We will start with documentation, police reports, medical records, and then we go deeper." I frowned, confused, until she asked Clara, "Do you know if your family has access to your trust fund?" My chest tightened. My grandfather had left money for me set aside for my future, but my parents had always managed it. I had never seen the statements, never questioned their control. Why I asked? Dana leaned forward. "Because I have a contact who flagged something unusual. Transfers large sums moving out of an account with your name attached but not signed by you." My stomach dropped. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were copies of bank records, numbers I barely understood but recognized enough to see my name, and thousands upon thousands siphoned out. "Where did it go?" I whispered. Dana tapped the page. "Shell companies, and then into Amelia's career. Campaign donations, business ventures, even that party last night. Clara, they used your money to build her empire." The room spun. My own future had been stolen. My inheritance drained to fund the sister who had humiliated me in front of everyone. The rage rose like fire in my chest. They told me to be grateful. They told me I was nothing. And all along they were robbing me. Dana's voice was calm but fierce. "This is fraud. This is theft. We are not just talking about family drama. We are talking about criminal charges. I sat back, breathless, images flashing in my mind of Amelia basking in the spotlight, my mother's endless bragging, my father's lectures about loyalty. All of it built on money that was mine. Tears blurred my vision, but they were not from sorrow this time. They were from fury. I want every detail, I said, my voice shaking but hard. Dana nodded. Then we will get every detail. As I left her office, my phone buzzed. It was Russell. Meet me, his message read. Urgent. I hurried across town to his modest apartment where he ushered me in with his usual quiet efficiency. He poured me coffee and slid a thick folder across the table. You need to see this, he said. My hands trembled as I opened it. More records, more evidence. Emails between my father and Amelia's employers, notes about transferring funds, promises of favors. My breath caught as I read one line aloud. Make sure Amelia shines. Her sister has resources she doesn't need. My stomach turned. They had reduced me to a resource, a bank account, nothing more. Russell watched me silently as I flipped through page after page, the truth hitting me like waves. This is not just abuse, I whispered. This is betrayal. He nodded. They built her success with your money, Clara. Every medal, every speech, every title. None of it was earned. I closed the folder carefully, afraid my shaking hands might rip the pages. My whole life I had been told I was unworthy, a failure less than her. And all along they had stolen from me to build her pedestal. The humiliation of last night burned hotter. It was not just an assault. It was the culmination of years of theft, manipulation, and cruelty. I pressed my hands against the table, steadying myself. This changes everything. Russell leaned forward, his eyes steady. The question is, what are you going to do with it? I met his gaze, my jaw tight despite the pain. I am going to make them regret every choice that brought us here. 2 days later, my mother called, and her tone was sugar laced with poison. Clara, dear, we need to talk, she said, as though last week's events had been nothing more than a minor misunderstanding. She asked me to come to the house, the one I had not stepped inside for months, and something in me knew it was not a request. I drove there slowly, gripping the wheel, repeating Dana's words in my head. Do not sign anything. Do not give them an inch. The house looked exactly as I remembered, pristine hedges, polished windows, a facade of perfection. My mother opened the door wearing one of her pastel cardigans, the image of gentle domesticity, but her eyes were sharp and watchful. Thank you for coming, she said softly, as though she were the victim. Inside the living room, my father sat rigidly in his chair. Amelia sprawled on the couch with her phone in hand, her smirk already in place. On the coffee table lay a neat stack of papers. Sit, my father ordered without looking at me. I stayed standing. My mother gestured toward the papers, her voice syrupy. We want to put this unpleasantness behind us. Amelia chuckled. You mean she wants to stop making a big deal out of nothing? I stared at my sister, rage simmering. She still bore no shame, no fear. My father slid the papers toward me. This is an agreement. You will sign it, take a generous payout, and in return, you will remain silent. No lawsuits, no police, no embarrassment. He said embarrassment as if that was the crime, not the bruise still blooming on my jaw. I glanced at the document. A non-disclosure agreement. A waiver of legal claims. A gag order disguised as a gift. Generous payout, I repeated coldly. How generous of you to offer me my own stolen money. Amelia sat up straight, her eyes flashing. Watch your mouth. You were always jealous and pathetic. Why ruin the family over a little bruise? My laugh was bitter. You dragged me by my hair in front of 50 people. You think this is about a bruise? My mother leaned forward, her hands folded like a prayer. Clara, this protects everyone's reputation, including yours. That was when I saw it tucked subtly near the lamp, a small voice recorder. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression steady. They were not only trying to buy me off, they wanted to twist my words. I placed the papers back on the table and leaned forward. Do you know what is funny? You think I am still the Clara who let you humiliate me in silence. You think I would not notice your little recorder. You think throwing me pennies from my own stolen inheritance will make me disappear. My father slammed his hand on the armrest, the cups rattling. Do not play the victim. I leaned closer until my eyes locked with his. I am not playing anything. I came here to give you a chance. This is not a negotiation. This is your warning. My mother gasped. My father's face turned red, and Amelia laughed nervously. You are bluffing, she said. I picked up my bag calmly and walked toward the door. Keep thinking that. Outside in the night air, my hands shook, but it was not fear. It was clarity. They thought they still held power. They thought their control remained unbroken. They had no idea what was coming. The morning after that confrontation, I sat in Dana's office with Russell at my side, the folder of evidence spread out across the polished wood desk like weapons waiting to be used. Dana's expression was calm, but her eyes burned with purpose. We go public, she said firmly. They want silence. We give them noise. Russell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. I already traced some of the shell companies. Money was funneled into Amelia's promotion through 3 separate accounts, all under your father's supervision. There is no denying it. My stomach tightened, but I nodded. Do it. I am done hiding. Dana pulled out her laptop and began typing an official statement on my behalf. Her words were precise, cold, and calculated. She framed me not as a victim begging for pity, but as a woman standing up against abuse and fraud. This is about reclaiming power, she explained. We position you as someone exposing corruption, not crying over it. I handed her a flash drive containing every photo and video Russell had gathered, including one clip recorded by a guest at the party. It showed Amelia striking me, dragging me in the crowd, frozen in complicit silence. Dana's lips curved into a grim smile. This will be impossible to spin. By early afternoon, she had called a journalist she trusted, a woman named Jenna, who had built a reputation exposing corruption in local businesses. I met Jenna in a small cafe downtown, my sunglasses hiding the bruises, my heart pounding. She slid into the booth and raised an eyebrow. You sounded intense on the phone. I pushed the flash drive and printed documents toward her. This explains everything. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the first pages. This is not just family drama, she whispered. This is assault and fraud. I nodded. And I want you to publish it. She looked up at me, surprised. Are you ready for what this will mean? The headlines will not be kind at first. I swallowed hard, but kept my voice steady. Let them come. I am done being silent. Hours later, the article went live. Prominent family under fire for assault and financial exploitation, the headline read. Within minutes, my phone lit up with messages. Old friends, distant relatives, even strangers reached out. Some sent support, others disbelief. On social media, the video of Amelia hitting me spread like wildfire. Clips were shared thousands of times, captioned with outrage. Who does this to their own sister? Imagine clapping while your sibling bleeds. The comments piled up, each one a wave of validation and fury. Russell called that evening, his voice rough but satisfied. They are panicking. Phones are ringing off the hook at your father's office. Amelia's company is under review already. Dana called right after. Your father tried to reach me. He is desperate for this to disappear. I told him it is too late. I sat on my couch, my laptop open, watching the storm unfold in real time. My hands shook, but this time it was not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was release. For so long I had been erased, silenced, but now the truth was louder than their lies. I thought of Amelia's smug face as she dragged me by the hair, of my mother's laugh slicing through my humiliation, of my father's indifference. And I whispered to myself, you thought I was weak. You thought wrong. As the night deepened, I scrolled through the endless flood of reactions. Reporters speculated colleagues of my father distanced themselves. Amelia's name trended for all the wrong reasons. Their perfect image was cracking under the weight of truth. They had built their empire on stolen money and cruelty, and now the world could see it. I lay back against the cushions, exhaustion washing over me, but for the first time in years I felt light. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. They wanted me silent. Instead, I had become impossible to ignore. The courthouse steps felt heavier than stone as I climbed them. Russell on one side, carrying the thick binder of evidence, and Dana on the other, calm and collected, like she had walked this path 1,000 times. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and I kept my head high, though my stomach twisted. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense, thick with anticipation. My father sat at the plaintiff's table in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent for a year, Amelia beside him in a blazer far too polished for the disgrace she carried, and my mother with her lips pressed so tightly they were nearly white. They would not look at me. The judge entered, and the room rose. When we sat again, the attorney my father had hired stood and launched into his opening statement. "Your Honor," he boomed. "My clients have been defamed, their reputations destroyed by baseless accusations and a misleading video." He gestured toward me like I was the criminal. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears, my bruises tingling with phantom pain, but I kept my face still. Then Dana rose. Her voice was clear steel wrapped in velvet. "Your Honor, not only do we reject their claims, we present evidence that my client was the victim of physical assault, financial exploitation, and gaslighting at the hands of these very plaintiffs." She motioned to Russell, who carried the binder forward and placed it on the judge's desk. Dana opened it page by page, presenting bank statements, transfers, and emails. "This," she said, "is proof that Mr. Reynolds, using his control over Clara's trust, siphoned hundreds of thousands of dollars into shell corporations that directly funded Amelia Reynolds's promotions and public image campaigns." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicked. My father's jaw clenched. Amelia shifted uncomfortably, and my mother finally glanced at me, her face pale. The judge frowned and asked Dana to continue. She held up the flash drive. "And this, Your Honor, contains video evidence of Amelia Reynolds physically assaulting my client in front of dozens of witnesses. The full, unedited version." The judge signaled for the bailiff to play it on the screen. The room fell silent as the video began. There I was, standing in the ballroom, Amelia mocking me, then the sudden punch, my head snapping back. Her hand yanking my hair, dragging me across the floor. My mother's laugh audible, my father standing still, guests frozen. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. When the video ended, there was a collective inhale shock and outrage thick in the air. The judge turned to my father's lawyer. "You claimed misleading. Do you still maintain that position?" The attorney sputtered, trying to reframe, but the damage was done. Dana seized the moment. "This is not family drama, Your Honor. This is systemic abuse, financial theft, and public assault. My client has lived under their control for years, silenced and erased until she finally had the courage and evidence to expose them." The judge leaned back, his expression stern. "These allegations are serious. I am unsealing these records for review and ordering a full investigation into the financial documents." Reporters erupted in whispers. For the first time, I saw fear flash across my father's face. Amelia's hands trembled as she reached for her water, and my mother sat perfectly still, her mask cracking. We recessed for lunch, and outside the courthouse the press swarmed. Dana gave me a small nod, and I stepped to the microphones. My voice did not shake. For years, I was painted as the ungrateful daughter, the failure, the one who could never measure up. But today, the truth is visible. This is not about jealousy or petty arguments. This is about abuse, theft, and the right to reclaim my voice. I will not be silent again. Behind me, Russell handed the journalist the flash drive with the video for public release. Within an hour, it was everywhere. News outlets ran the footage, social media blazed with outrage comments flooding with disbelief and fury. Amelia's company announced she was suspended pending investigation. My father's clients began to withdraw contracts. The empire they built on my silence was cracking in real time. That evening, I sat in Dana's office as the sun set my phone buzzing nonstop with updates. She leaned back in her chair and asked quietly, "Do you feel satisfied?" I thought of the years of being invisible, of the night in the ballroom, of Amelia's fist and my mother's laugh. I met Dana's eyes and said, "It is not satisfaction. It is freedom." When the trial days ended and the storm of cameras quieted, I found myself walking alone through the city streets as though I were meeting the world for the first time. The air was crisp, the sidewalks alive with strangers who did not know my story, and for once I did not feel like hiding. The weight that had pressed on me since childhood was lifting piece by piece. My father's business was unraveling under investigation. Amelia's career crumbled overnight, and my mother retreated into silence, her social circle dissolving as quickly as their carefully polished image. They had spent years silencing me, controlling me, telling me that I was nothing. But now the entire world had witnessed their cruelty. I went back to my apartment one evening and opened the small jewelry box that held a necklace I had once worn proudly. Amelia had ripped it from my neck during a fight years ago, leaving it broken in pieces. I had kept it hidden away like a reminder of weakness. Now I picked it up, fastened it carefully around my neck, and stared at myself in the mirror. The bruises were fading, but my eyes looked different, sharper, stronger. "This time it stays," I whispered. It was not about revenge anymore, not even about justice. It was about reclaiming myself, about refusing to be erased. I realized then that freedom did not feel like fireworks or triumph. It felt like breathing without weight, like stepping into sunlight after years in the dark. The people who once defined me as a failure no longer held that power. They had destroyed themselves by underestimating me. I walked to the window and looked out at the city glowing in the evening light, and for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. My life was not suddenly perfect. The scars would remain, but they were mine. And as I stood there, the sounds of the city rising up around me, I whispered to myself, they wanted me broken. Instead, they built my strength.